You know, we all think we've got Valentine's Day figured out. It's all about hearts, chocolates, and flowers, right? But it turns out, behind this holiday we know so well, there's this surprisingly complex and honestly dramatic story. It's full of martyrs, poets, and all kinds of global traditions. So in this explainer, we're going to unwrap the real, untold story of February 14th.
So, let's start with the big question. Who was the man behind the name? The story of Saint Valentine isn't some single clear-cut tale you read in a history book. Nope, it's more like a puzzle, pieced together from centuries of different legends.
And there are some really dramatic stories out there about him. One legend says he was a priest who completely defied Emperor Claudius II by secretly marrying soldiers. He just believed that love shouldn't be sacrificed for war. Others tell of him healing his jailer's daughter from blindness, or even cutting little hearts out of parchment to remind Christians of God's love. But the one thing all these stories agree on, he was executed on February 14th.
And that brings us to this iconic phrase. According to one of the most popular legends, right as he was facing his execution, Valentine wrote one last farewell letter to the jailer's daughter, the one he had befriended and healed. And he signed it, "From your Valentine." Just think about that, sparking a tradition that has literally lasted for nearly 2,000 years. So, how in the world does a pretty grim execution in the 3rd century morph into this huge global celebration of romance? Well, it definitely didn't happen overnight. The evolution of this holiday is a pretty fascinating story all on its own.
It was actually literature that really lit the spark for the romantic side of Valentine's Day. As you can see here on the timeline, it all kind of kicks off in the 14th century when the English poet Geoffrey Chaucer first linked the day with love. He wrote that it was when birds chose their mates for the year. Then fast forward to 1415 and we get one of the first actual Valentines, a poem sent by the Duke of Orleans to his wife while he was locked up in prison. And the oldest one we can still see today, that's from 1477, a letter from a woman named Marjorie Bruce to her fiancé where she calls him "my very beloved Valentine."
Okay, so from those early roots in Europe, the holiday just exploded across the globe. But here's the cool part. As it traveled, it changed, picking up all these fascinating local twists and traditions along the way. Just take a look at Japan and South Korea, where they've created this amazing 2-part celebration. On February 14th, it's the women who give gifts, usually chocolates, to the men. And they even have different kinds of chocolate. Giri choco for colleagues and friends, and honmei choco, which is for a true love. Then, exactly 1 month later, it's the men's turn to give a gift back, on a day they call White Day.
And the tradition just keeps evolving. In South Korea, they've actually added a 3rd day. So if you didn't get any gifts on Valentine's Day or White Day, you and your single friends get together on April 14th, which they call Black Day, and you all eat jjajangmyeon, a dish of noodles in a black bean sauce. Pretty clever, right?
The variations around the world are just incredible. I mean, in Wales, the traditional romantic gift is a hand-carved wooden love spoon. How cool is that? Meanwhile, in Finland and Estonia, they've shifted the whole focus, celebrating February 14th as Friends' Day. And in Italy, you might get a key of Saint Valentine, which is like a symbolic invitation to unlock the giver's heart. It just goes to show you how a single holiday can be reinterpreted to reflect what's important to different cultures.
But okay, let's rewind a bit. Long before all the commercial cards and boxes of chocolates, Valentine's Day had this much more mystical side. It was a time for old folk traditions and divinations, all designed to predict a person's romantic future.
Here's a classic example. A young woman who was hoping to see her future husband would take 2 laurel leaves, wet them with some rose water, and then place them under her pillow. The belief was that Saint Valentine himself would show her her one true love in a dream that night. And remember Chaucer's whole thing with birds? Well, that played into these divinations too. According to folklore, the very first bird a woman saw on Valentine's morning could actually predict the character of her future partner. So, seeing a titmouse meant a kind family man. But a sparrow was a bad sign, a warning of a dishonest suitor. The luckiest sight of all, a bullfinch, which promised a true prince.
But, while Valentine's Day has become this commercial powerhouse and a beloved tradition in so many parts of the world, it's really important to remember that it's not universally accepted. In some places, it's actually seen as a source of cultural controversy.
Yeah, in several countries, the celebration is officially restricted or even outright banned. Governments and religious authorities have said that it goes against local cultural or religious values. So in places like Pakistan, Malaysia, and Iran, there are actual prohibitions on public celebrations and on selling any Valentine's-themed goods.
So, when you step back and look at it, this holiday we often take for granted is actually this rich tapestry woven from threads of faith, folklore, poetry, and a lot of commerce. It's been shaped and reshaped by countless cultures over so many centuries, which really just leaves us with one final thought. Now that you know its full, complicated story, what does this day truly represent to you?